The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the empty stretch of country highway. Heat shimmered off the pavement, distorting the landscape like a cruel mirage. Rachel's boots were worn thin, her soles aching with each step. Dust clung to her long skirt and the denim jacket she'd wrapped tightly around her youngest child, who slept in her arms, too exhausted to cry. Behind her, her two other children trudged silently. Emma, the oldest at 9, held her little brother's hand and carried a half-empty water bottle she guarded like gold. They hadn't eaten since the night before, a can of cold beans split 4 ways. Rachel's body ached, not just from fatigue but from the invisible weight of failure. Just 2 months ago, she had a job, a cheap apartment, and hope. But when the factory downsized, single mothers like her were the first to go. The landlord gave her a week to vacate. Then the car broke down outside a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Since then, it had been desperation, survival, and prayers. She whispered one now as her legs threatened to buckle, "God, please. Just a sign. A little mercy." Then, in the distance, she heard the rumble. A large silver wagon-style pickup truck appeared on the horizon, cutting through the heat waves. She instinctively stepped off the road, shielding her children. Most cars didn't stop. They rarely even slowed down. But this one did. The truck rolled to a gentle halt, and the door opened. Out stepped a tall man with broad shoulders, a thick belt buckle, and the air of someone who owned everything he touched. His cowboy boots crunched the gravel as he approached, hat tilted against the sun. He scanned the children first, then Rachel, then the rusted duffel bag at her feet. "You headed somewhere?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Rachel lifted her chin, summoning what little pride she had left. "Anywhere better than here." He studied her, really looked at her. Not with pity, but with understanding. Then, without another word, he turned and pointed to his truck. "Get in my wagon now. All of you." Rachel blinked. "Why?" "Because I ain't lettin' a mother and her babies die of heat and hunger on my land. Now come on." And though her heart trembled with fear and uncertainty, Rachel stepped forward. Because for the first time in weeks, someone didn't see her as a problem. He saw her as a person. The drive was long and silent, winding through golden pastures and sun-baked hills. Rachel sat in the back seat, her youngest asleep in her arms, while her other 2 children gazed out the windows in wide-eyed wonder. They had never seen so much open land, stretches of grass that danced with the wind, herds of cattle moving slowly like living clouds, and horses galloping near wooden fences that ran for miles. Cole Whitaker, the man behind the wheel, didn't speak much. But his presence was calm, steady. Every so often, he'd glance into the rearview mirror, checking on them. Not with suspicion, with quiet care. Rachel didn't relax, though. Her guard was still up. Too many times, kindness had come with a price. She kept replaying his words in her mind, "Get in my wagon now." No hesitation. No questions. Why? They pulled up to the main house just as the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting everything in amber light. The ranch house stood tall and wide, white siding, a wraparound porch, and flower beds that were still clinging to summer color. The driveway curved around a large oak tree, its branches reaching out like an old guardian. As Cole stepped out and opened the back door, the children hesitated. Rachel placed a protective arm around them, ready for anything. But Cole simply nodded toward the house. "You'll stay in the guest wing. Got 2 rooms, a bathroom, and a stocked kitchen. You'll be safe here." A ranch hand came jogging up, confusion on his face. "Mr. Whitaker, everything okay?" Cole's voice was firm. "This is Rachel and her kids. They're guests. Feed them. No questions." The man blinked, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Inside, the house smelled of pinewood and fresh bread. Rachel stood awkwardly in the doorway as one of the ranch staff showed the children to a room with 2 beds and a chest full of toys. The sight nearly broke her. Emma gasped softly and whispered, "Mom, is this real?" Rachel couldn't answer. Her voice was trapped in her throat. Later that night, after her children were fed, bathed, and sleeping soundly in warm beds for the first time in weeks, Rachel sat alone at the edge of the hallway. The quiet felt surreal. She still didn't know why Cole Whitaker had stopped for her. But in that moment, sitting in borrowed peace under someone else's roof, one thing became clear: maybe, just maybe, this stranger had no strings. Maybe his kindness came from somewhere rarer than she'd known in a long time. Maybe it came from honor. The rhythm of ranch life slowly wrapped itself around Rachel and her children like a warm, dusty blanket. Each day began before the sun rose, with the sound of roosters crowing and boots crunching across gravel. The ranch buzzed with activity, horses to feed, cattle to check, fences to mend, and paperwork to manage. Rachel, who once doubted her place here, found purpose in the work. She insisted on helping. She mucked stalls, sorted supplies, and helped with the horses. Her hands blistered, her back ached, but every task gave her dignity she'd nearly lost. Cole never hovered. He simply included her. He gave her space, but never let her feel invisible. When ranch hands asked questions, he told them plainly, she's here because she belongs here. That's all that matters. One afternoon, clouds rolled over the mountains, dark and fast. By early evening, the wind picked up, and a storm announced itself with low, rumbling thunder. Cole was in the barn checking supplies when Rachel came running, breathless. A section of the south fence is down. I saw a few horses slipping through into the far pasture. Without a word, Cole grabbed his coat and motioned for her to follow. The rain came hard, cold and stinging. The two of them worked under the stormy sky, chasing down the startled horses and guiding them back through the breach. Rachel's boots sank in the mud as she heaved heavy wooden rails into place. Her hair stuck to her cheeks, her clothes soaked through, but she didn't complain. At one point, a horse bucked wildly near the gate. Rachel stepped in front of it without hesitation, arms wide and voice firm. The horse slowed, recognizing her calm. Cole watched in awe. By the time they hammered in the last plank, both of them were drenched and caked with dirt. They leaned against the barn wall, breathing hard, water dripping from the brim of Cole's hat. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly, looking at her with something more than admiration. "I always help where I'm needed," she replied, brushing wet hair from her face. There was a pause between them, a quiet moment where the wind eased and only their heartbeats filled the space. Cole's voice was low when he finally spoke again. "You're not just passing through, Rachel. You belong somewhere, maybe here." For the first time, she didn't flinch at the idea. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't temporary. Maybe this was becoming home. Spring had swept over the ranch like a breath of fresh promise. Green pastures stretched wide under blue skies, the horses glistened in the sun, and wildflowers bloomed along the fence lines. Life had taken root again, not just in the land, but in Rachel. She moved with ease now, wearing a worn hat and leather gloves like she'd been born to the ranch life. Her children laughed freely again, chasing each other near the stables, their cheeks pink with life. Emma helped in the garden. Noah fed chickens. Little Jonah, once so quiet, giggled from the back of a pony with Cole steadying him nearby. Cole had never said much about his past, but Rachel had learned over time that he'd once been married. She'd left him years ago, for the city, for a life with less mud and more money. He never remarried, never had children. Until now, his heart had stayed closed behind a wall of duty and ranch work. But Rachel changed things. She didn't try to fill his world, she simply fit into it. She earned the respect of his ranch hands, managed the books better than his accountant, and turned the guest wing into a home filled with warmth. Then, on a Sunday morning, Cole did something that silenced the whole valley. It started like a normal church gathering under the large oak tree near the ranch. Friends, neighbors, ranchers, and workers stood with coffee in hand and sun hats tilted against the breeze. Cole stepped up to speak as he sometimes did, his voice calm and steady. But this time, he took Rachel's hand and pulled her gently beside him. "I once thought I had everything," he began, "land, money, freedom. But turns out, I didn't have a family." "Not really." Rachel's breath caught. The children stood close, eyes wide. "I met this woman on the side of the road, carrying everything she loved in her arms. And somehow, she carried me too, back to life." He paused, looking at her with fierce tenderness. "So today, in front of all of you, I'm asking her to stay for good. Not as a guest, not as a helper, but as my wife." Gasps, silence, and then soft cries from people who had never seen the rancher's heart laid so bare. Rachel's hands shook. "Why me?" she whispered. Cole smiled. "Because when the world gave you every reason to give up, you kept walking. And when you had nothing, you gave everything. That's the kind of woman I want beside me." And so, in the heart of the valley, a homeless mother of 3 became the beating heart of a ranch, and the woman who reminded everyone that sometimes, love finds you when you have nothing left but hope.